Happy New Year. So 2020 was pretty weird in a lot of ways, lots of ups and downs, and definitely lots of challenges, big and small. I think one of the big challenges was how to meet new people. And if you're single, how to find love, how to create a romantic relationship, a meaningful relationship, a fun relationship in 2020 with social distancing. I don't know about you, but I don't think there are many people that have tried to date during a pandemic. So 2021, here we come. And today we have Coach T to give us some tips and advice on how to find love in 2021. So I'd like to welcome Coach T today.
Hi, Angel. Thanks for having me. Happy 2021, guys.
It's going to be a good one. I know it.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good start because what's more important than love, right?
I would argue that just might be the most important thing.
Yeah.
Especially for entrepreneurs who have already achieved so much. Usually the love life is one of the last things that they're missing.
Yeah, well, as an entrepreneur, I can say, even outside of, pandemic and social distancing, as an entrepreneur, it's really hard because, you're giving your all, you're giving your everything to your business, but even, big kind of corporate execs or anyone that has been trying to navigate or pivot, in business and take on new roles and responsibilities, anyone, working in 2020 is, found it difficult. And especially, I think any business professional, especially entrepreneurs that are trying to meet new people outside of work and to build meaningful relationships, that requires time and investment. And, but we're also, trying to build these businesses. So we are looking to you to help us figure out what's the best way to not miss out on one of the most important aspects of life, love, while we're, pursuing our passions as entrepreneurs and business leaders. So yeah, so tell us what to do. We are all ears.
Well, I love it. So I am going to give you guys a little bit of a snippet of a few things that you can practically do to change your love life and relationship game this year, things you can start doing immediately. And so I'd like to sort of introduce to you some concepts and then tell you a little bit about me and why you should be listening to me. So the entrepreneur versus relationship problem is not new. It's an age-old problem that has been around for a long time. And for those of you listening who are not entrepreneurs but are professionals, this applies to you as well. But as Angel was saying, we all know as entrepreneurs, the baby is the business, the relationship is the business. And it's because it takes so much time and energy to build that there's not much time, seemingly, keyword seemingly, for other things. And that's the problem. But first, let me tell you a little bit about some facts, because as entrepreneurs, we like facts. And one of the things that I say around my house all the time is that facts don't lie. So we've got two big statistics. The first is that entrepreneurs get divorced at a rate of 68%. And that's from Forbes. And what we do know is that the metric, the general number, the average number of divorce for the average person is 50%. But for entrepreneurs, it's 68%. So that tells me a couple of things. One, there's a lot of you who are on the market, which can be a good thing. And there's a way to capitalize on that. And we'll get to that soon. And then the next thing is that entrepreneurs remain on dating apps longer than the average user. And I think that's also really important to point out, because we know that the average user for dating apps is already, online for such a long time. But on average, the entrepreneur is on for about 1.5 to 2 years before anything happens. But before you listen to my facts, I want to give you a sense of credibility and tell you about me. Well, who is Coach T? I happen to be a mother and wife. As you can see, my family here. I am an entrepreneur, the founder of Maxed and Matched, which is a holistic dating application, which will be coming out this year. And I am former Mrs. Maryland 2019. And there's more. The most important thing that you have to know about me is that I am a retired elite matchmaker, and my work has been featured across various platforms. I've been in documentaries, on the news, all over the place. And so what I did in my business was I was an elite matchmaker it started out as senators and politicians, people who were on the Hill. And that grew to celebrities and others, and that grew into entrepreneurs and CEOs. So I have a background in this finding love thing. This is exactly what I do. So there's more. I can't wait to tell you about. So the biggest question I've been getting is, should you be dating during the pandemic? And the resounding answer is yes, you absolutely must be dating during the pandemic. It's going to be important that you do that in a way that is wise and follows, the health codes and precautions that we're being told about. But that does not mean you should not be dating. Now, there are 4 steps that I'm going to teach you today that can help you up-level your dating game. Now, I am full of tips and tricks, but today we only have a limited amount of time, and I'm going to give you a little snippet. If you'd like more information after this, I'm actually hosting a free masterclass, and we'll get into that momentarily, called Strategic Dating for Entrepreneurs. So it is made for you. But let's get into some 4 steps that you can utilize right away. So the first is to get in a camp. And the camp is either going to be to limit your dating app time or to make dating app time. So dating apps need to be in your life. And there's only one camp to be in, as I just said. So there are some people who are on dating apps to the point that it's almost like a religion. They're on it all the time. They could be in a board meeting and they're swiping. They could be on a conference call and they're on the app all the time. I recently went out to pick up some takeout food for my family, and there was a glass. And so I could see a table of gentlemen sitting on this round table, and one of their backs was to me. And I saw one of the guys swiping, and just basically showing his friends the pictures, and the friends would tell him whether he should swipe left or right. Now that's, really silly, because you shouldn't be on the dating app, right, while you're out to eat, because it needs to be very deliberate, and you've got to protect your time. And what we know as entrepreneurs is the one thing that we don't have a lot of is time. If we could add more time in a day, that'd be amazing. We would get so much more done. If anyone could use it, it would be us. But the time that you're putting into dating apps when you're on them all the time is not quality time. And thus the results are not quality. Now, the other camp is that you need to make dating app time. And that's really hard for people who have sworn off dating apps prior to the pandemic. But what we know is we can't go out and meet people in our normal fashion. And so we must resort to the online dating apps. And it's a great way to meet people. And I'll tell you this, one of my favorite things about the pandemic right now with dating is that everyone is on the app. There's not anyone who is single. There's not many people, I should say, because you guys might not all be on, but there are not many single people who are not on dating apps. So I'll tell you a little bit of a quick side note. So I had 2 clients, an actor and an actress. And the actor really wanted to see the actress. And I tried to set them up numerous times, and it didn't work out because her production schedule was so hectic. She just couldn't make the time. She hadn't necessarily put dating, at the forefront of her agenda. She wanted to do it, but it didn't drive everything. Well, we tried to set them up again for over a year, couldn't make it all work. Well, the pandemic hit, she was stuck at home, couldn't really do anything. Production studios were shut down or operating at a snail pace, and now they connected, right? And now they have been dating for about 6 months and things are looking really good. That would have never happened had it not been the pandemic. So I'm saying that to say, if you're not on an app, make time to get on an app, because it's not just the low-hanging fruit who are on the app now, it's the high-hanging fruit. It's all the good stuff. So you've got to learn the strategy around using the app so you don't run into the low-hanging fruit. And that's what I'm going to teach in my masterclass that you guys can sign up for. But that's something to note. The second thing that is really important is that once you're on the app, I want you to do something else. I want you to master the thumbnail. And I call the thumbnail your profile picture. And what I run into a lot is that entrepreneurs are very good at putting LinkedIn pictures, putting headshots, professional shots on their dating app. And that's very problematic because all you have is the thumbnail, and that's going to be the difference between someone swiping right or left, moving on or not, reading more of your profile or bypassing everything because they don't like the vibe you're giving them with the picture. So it's really important that you do that. So as entrepreneurs, there's one thing that we know a lot about, and it's quality. And so I would say that now is a fantastic time to get a professional photographer to take some editorial and lifestyle type shots of you. So you should have a profile picture that is going to show a great, front on picture of you. That's a full body shot because people want to see the full body shot. If you don't give the full body shot, it makes them wonder what it is that you're hiding. So we don't want to lose people from that. The next thing you need to do is you need to showcase who you are. So you're an entrepreneur. Great. What is it that you sell? What is your product? And what is it that you do outside of being an amazing founder? What are your hobbies? And then I want a picture of that. Have a picture of that so people can feel and sense what it would be like to be living in a life with you. And that picture does just that. And then I want you to go through all your pictures if you're already online, or if you're not and you're thinking of what the third picture should be, I'll tell you what it should not be. It should not be a picture of you and your friends, or you and a group of people, you and the family, because it's very confusing to the person who is just looking at a thumbnail, who only has a limited amount of time, just mere seconds to decide if they want to learn more about you. It's hard for them to figure out who you are. And they're wondering why you have this picture that makes it so hard. Are you trying to hide something? So that is number 2. Moving on to number 3. It's really important that you develop your elevator pitch, one of my favorites. And this is one of my favorite points to point out to founders because, as I stated earlier, I am also an entrepreneur and a founder. And so if there's anything that I can do, one of the best things I can do is be in an elevator with someone and give them my quick pitch on my product. And it is good. And it's something that I've perfected over time. And if you're an entrepreneur, founder, you are used to going over your slide deck and you're used to presenting. And sometimes, you've got just 5 minutes to present. And sometimes you've got 2 minutes to even be able to gain leverage to get the 5 minutes and on from there. And what's really important here is that you develop an elevator pitch about who you are. So if someone were to ask you who you are, you need to be able to convey it to them succinctly and with such ease that it's going to be ultimately attractive to them. Now, this exercise is a lot harder than it seems because most of you don't have it. If someone were to ask you about yourself, you would probably mumble a little bit about some of your professional accolades, and then it would probably stop there. So what's important is it's great that they know that you're a founder, because as founders, we are passionate people. As entrepreneurs, we want to know what it is that you're passionate about. We're going to want to know what it is that you enjoy doing outside of work. We want to know what your values are. And we want to know what you're looking for in a partner. Those are things we absolutely cannot miss. And those need to be compacted very succinctly into your elevator pitch. So the next time that you're online and you have a profile that comes up or someone messages you and you want to speak to them, you can very quickly say who you are and share your value. And if in all this mayhem, you happen to be out and about, maybe picking up takeout food because you never know where you could meet someone, and you happen to run into someone, you can succinctly say who you are, what you're all about, and what you're looking for, and they get it. Very important. But if you don't have a great idea of who you are, what it is you're looking for, and how to convey it, you will continue to be very unhappy with the results of your dating life, because you're going to attract people who don't fit the bill, and people who should be interested in you are not going to be, because you haven't been able to convey who you are. Now, as for number 4, execute, execute, execute. This is the one area where I see entrepreneurs falling flat. We've got a reason in the world for us to stay up until 2 a.m. to work on a project for our business, but we don't put half that time into our business of relationships. And once we do start putting in time, let's say we put in some time to a dating app, we meet someone, we never link up. We never actually have the in-person meeting that we need to have to solidify if this is a potential great relationship for us or not. And that's something we've got to work on. So very often, if people don't meet within the first 2 weeks, they never meet. And this is why you must execute. When you find someone who's a great match and you think that there's compatibility, execute to see if there's chemistry. You never know. So if that information was helpful to you, then I want to share how you can get more of it. So I am having a masterclass that is January 11th and 12th. That's this coming Monday and Tuesday. We've got 2 different time slots that you could join. And it's a masterclass called Strategic Dating for Entrepreneurs. And what's really important is that you're going to walk away with 4 proven strategies to jumpstart your dating life in 2021. And the program is an hour. We get really in depth about things that you can start implementing and doing right away. So the first thing we talk about is changing your beliefs around dating, which is important because you've got to get this mindset thing straight. Because as entrepreneurs, how many of us would say that our business is in shambles? Our business sucks. We would never say that. Even when our business is on its absolute last leg, even when we are in the middle of a fundraising crisis, we talk about our business as if it's Goldman Sachs, because it just is how it is. That's how you've got to talk about your dating life and relationship life. That's the kind of mindset that you need to have around it. So as entrepreneurs, we should know mindset is important. The second thing we talk about is resolving the entrepreneur dating problem. And one of those things is figuring out time. And I actually have a strategy that I give all my clients for using a certain amount of time. We decide the amount of time, and then we maximize it. And have a very proven strategy for what we do with all the minutes within that time to ultimately change our dating life and eliminate the entrepreneur dating problem. And third, we get into how we're going to stand out on the market. So now we know that there are a lot of people who are online. There are people, who are out and about. How are we going to stand out in a sea of people to get our love? And then fourth, once you get the person, how do you keep the momentum and how do you keep things moving on your path? So those are the things we're going to be talking about. If you would like to join, there is limited availability. You can reserve your spot by just going to this link that's on the screen right now. So go in right now and reserve your spot, because we only have a certain number of spaces and we're going to be sold out. And I'm thinking this is the only time I'm going to be doing it this year. So please join us. Thanks so much. I hope that information is helpful to you guys and you can implement it, something of those 4 steps right away.
Okay, there are definitely some gems in there that I think I need to follow. And I think for me, it's probably the first one. So I have a funny story. So the first one being basically get on the app and make time and be very intentional when you're in the app. So I have a funny story for you that I haven't shared with you. So, so recently I had a friend that I had met over a decade ago in Tel Aviv at a business event. We're both entrepreneurs. We reconnected recently. And I said, "Oh, like what made you, think of contacting me? We haven't talked in so long." And he's like, "Oh, well, I stumbled on your profile on Tinder." And I said, "I didn't even know I had a profile because I didn't have the app on my phone, and I hadn't had it on my phone for ages. But I had at one point, had the app. I was active on the app, and I was actively dating. And I don't remember when I took it off my phone, but I remember taking it off my phone because I was like, oh, well, I'm not really actively dating, so I'll just take it off my phone." So we reconnected through Tinder, and then it made me think, oh, well, maybe I should get back on Tinder. Like, how else am I going to meet people during, this pandemic? Yeah. And now, some of my projects were paused, so I had a little bit more time. So I felt like I could create the time for somebody new in my life. And then I was still kind of going over this in my head. I hadn't got back on the app yet. And then my boyfriend from middle school reached out to me, and and again, I was like, "Oh, what made you think?" He's like, "Oh, well, I stumbled across your profile on, it was Hinge or Tinder or whatever." So, I also did not, so I have Raya, the dating app.
Yeah, very good.
And now I put Tinder back on my phone, and I'm going to put Hinge back on my phone. But I think if you can elaborate a little bit more on that first one, because I know that the advice I need to take, because it's so difficult to meet people right now, and because I have created some space for a relationship in my life. What else can you tell us about how to be more intentional and active? Now that I see, I'll show you. Hold on. I'm back on there.
You're back.
I've got it now. So how do we be more intentional? And should we go all in on one app? Should we experiment with different apps? Tell us more about that first piece of advice you shared.
Yeah. So great question. And congratulations for being back in. That's a big step. So in terms of being intentional, it's just like anything else. When you're on the app, be on the app. Don't be on the app and doing other things, because you are not able to decipher if the people who you are looking at are good potential partners for you beyond just the very quick, immediate sense that you have, which is probably going to be visual. You're not probably even going to swipe through more than one of their pictures. So it doesn't really give you much to go off of. And let's say you do find someone who you're interested in. If you're not being intentional with your time, when you message this person, it's going to come across. There's not going to be much depth to it. And this person probably also gets many other responses, and it's not going to be interesting for them to respond back to you. And then it just becomes very cyclical.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really, intentional about all of that, especially the time. Now, in terms of which dating app, so that's a great question. You've got to figure out who you are, what your niche is, and what you want in a partner, because there are a variety of sources and resources that you can use. And some of those are occupational driven. Some of those are hobby driven. Some of those are religious based. Whatever your jam is, find it and get in that camp. I would say that realistically, you don't need to be on more than 2 apps, because if you're doing it well, your plate is going to be pretty full from just the 2 apps. Both of the apps that you mentioned are great. I mean, Tinder's great because of the amount of people that are on it. I mean, on average, Tinder says that the average person swipes 180 times a day. That's a lot. So that's a lot of people that they have a chance to go through. And so it's a great resource and great opportunity.
Yeah, I can tell when people are not being so intentional, because I'll get the message, hey, that's not a message I'm going to respond to, no matter how good your profile pic is.
Right.
It's like, okay, you just flipped through 30 people. you just said hey to like maybe 10 or 15, and then you kept swiping. So yeah, that didn't like really kind of, and being intentional about which app you're on and making sure that that's kind of your tribe, I think is good. I'm still exploring about kind of which tribe is going to be good for me.
Even the time, and you spoke to this, you said, you feel like now you have more time in your life and you're open to a partner. It's a great place to be. But I'm going to argue that if you're a single entrepreneur and you are open and interested in finding love, you have the time. So my strategy that I teach in my masterclass is that if you only implement 30 minutes a day, I can get you matched within a period of 6 months. Not just matched to any old person, matched to a person who is very likely going to be a long-term partner to you. Really important, because 30 minutes a day of quality time is going to mean much more than the lack of quality. And it's a big game changer.
Well, I keep telling you, I mean, you and I became friends through entrepreneurship, and and I think you're an amazing entrepreneur. And so I'm excited to be talking about this today. But I think I told you, like, at some point I'm going to have to become a client, not just your like friend in entrepreneurship. Like, yeah, I think those kind of success rates are amazing. And so, you've been very successful as an entrepreneur in dating, but how did you, when you were deciding kind of, I want to like feed this entrepreneurial passion and desire inside of me, how did you really narrow in on, getting into dating and relationship building?
Love it. So I never thought I would ever be doing this. I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur because that's been in my blood since I was a child. I used to have arguments with my parents about creating lemonade stands and all that sort of stuff. And then I moved to DC. I started working for Senator John Kerry, found myself doing lots of matchmaking on the side, outside of office hours, of course, because we had so many breakfasts and dinners to attend, and people were always looking for someone different to go with. So I would make little suggestions, and then the people would end up staying together. And that's how it went. I left that and then moved into real estate lobbying. In the meantime, in between that, I, finished law school and then got into real estate lobbying, and people were still calling me. And so I said, you know what, I need to leave this and create this business. So I worked as a one-to-one matchmaker, as a one-to-one elite matchmaker for some time. And I took on about 10 to 12 clients a year, which was fantastic. And the clients became my best of friends and still are. Because you have to really get to know them. You have to really get to know someone to be able to match them effectively. And with them, we had about an 86 to 90% success rate within the first year, which was amazing. Great numbers. But then one day I ended up, as we all do, we have these epiphany moments. I ended up having this not such amazing client who
we've all had those.
We've all had those that totally bit me in the behind. And I realized, I should have never taken him on as a client. And that's when I realized, you know what, I want to do something different. I want to create a business that allows me to help more people. So my starting rate for matchmaking services at the time was $55,000. So I said, I want to do something different because I was getting lots of inquiries from people who just couldn't afford that amount. And I wanted to show them how they could be strategic in their own lives and elevate to the type of person that they wanted to date if they weren't finding them. And if they thought they were where they needed to be, show them where to look for and strategize on how to get that type of person. And out of that, Maxed and Matched was born, which is a holistic dating app that helps people get better relationships by becoming better partners. And we do utilize matching functions. And as an offshoot of that, that's where I have my online courses and the masterclasses.
And so, tell me a little, and I still can't believe we didn't know each other when we were both in DC and in the lobbying world and both lawyers in Capitol Hill. So tell me a little bit more about your business as a whole. So you've got your online classes and you've got coaching, and then your app is already live, or you're developing this app?
So the app becomes live this spring. Things got a little delayed with COVID. So the app becomes live this spring. And so I decided during this whole pandemic that people were still asking me for my services. So I needed to do something in the interim. I needed to create online courses that they could utilize to sort of get things rolling, especially during a pandemic when there were so many single people frustrated about how they were going to meet the next person. So the app will be live in the spring. And as an offshoot of the app, people can still do online courses with me. But what the app does is it helps you completely elevate your relationships. We have a style component because I have never had anyone come to me with matchmaking who couldn't use a little up leveling with their style. We've got a mindfulness component because it's important that you are being mindful and happy with yourself so that you can be happy in a relationship. And then we have a fitness and nutrition component because I am a firm believer. And once you take care of yourself, it really elevates the game and who you can attract and what it is you're looking for in a partner. And once people go through the to-do list that we have each week for them, we've got little to-do lists where they just knock off a few things in each category. We open it up on Fridays for them to meet people over the weekend. And so they're matched with people in their geography who are also on the same path that they are, or if they're traveling, wherever they are, and then they can match. They can either accept those matches or we open it up and tell them, well, here are some local events or virtual events where you can meet the people who meet exactly the niche that you told us about when you first onboarded.
That sounds really holistic, and I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, when, I have been losing over the pandemic, like about 1 pound to 2 pounds a week. And, and I really feel like all of us, when you feel like you've got your mojo, like you've got your favorite shirt on, or you've just done a good run or a good workout or a good, yoga session, you feel like $1 million. And so I feel like you put out that kind of, energy out there that just attracts other people. So I think you're definitely, your holistic approach is definitely one where I think, you're going to attract the best partner when you're feeling the best about yourself. Right.
Yeah. And I think if you're in a relationship now, it totally elevates your relationship. So I've always been into fitness and nutrition. I'm also a certified personal trainer and nutritionist, but I always worked out, but never as diligently as I did in the years leading up to me competing for Mrs. Maryland and Mrs. Virginia and all that stuff. And I'll tell you, I woke up at 5 a.m. and worked my butt off. But what was interesting was, obviously there was a change to my body, but the biggest change happened in my partnership with my husband. It was totally different because I was making the time and taking the time for me, and it elevated us in ways I didn't even think it could. So it was great.
Yeah. And all those endorphins, right? It just, helps in every way to lift your mood. And that's got to pay off in terms of all of your relationships, work relationships, partnerships, relationships with your kids, when you've got those endorphins flowing through your body, you're unstoppable.
No, that's so true. So
it seems like you've taken a lot of your approach to very, very high end services, and you've adapted it at a way that you can scale it for lots of other people, because that sounds a lot more thorough than just simply swiping and, seeing if somebody looks attractive or not, or you like their 3 sentences that they've written for their profile.
Oh yeah. No, it's a lot more thorough because because it just gets to the meat of what really is. So often when people come to me for matchmaking services, one of 2 things happens. They either know that they want to be in a relationship, but they don't have a list. They don't know what it is specifically they're looking for, which becomes very problematic, because then how do you know when you find it? Or they end up in the camp where they've got a laundry list, and the list is something like, also an entrepreneur, however many millions, billions, whatever. And then they're super hot and all this stuff, right? But there's nothing there that's about the depth of who the person is. So they come across these things, they find these people, and then they're sorely disappointed because they don't have the whole kit and caboodle. So one of the stories that I tell is one of my favorite clients ever was a widowed lawyer. amazing, sharp dresser, very good looking guy. And he liked a certain type of woman, which was fine. You know, nobody's going to knock you for that. And I'll call her the model looks type woman because that's what was on his list. And every time I showed him someone who absolutely met his criteria, he didn't like it. He'd go out with these other people and then he'd be disappointed. He happened to be a father and had a son and wanted someone who accepted his son. And these people weren't worried about that. That was like the furthest thing from their mind. And finally, I brought him in and I said, so I'm not going to matchmake you anymore. I'm not going to do any more matching until we figure out what this person is going to look like in your home. Like, how are they going to interact with your son? How are they going to interact with you on a daily basis? How are they going to make you feel when you come home from the office and talk about your problems as a partner in the firm? What is it going to look like? And once we narrowed that down, it completely changed the game in terms of what we were looking for in a partner, the qualities. And now he's engaged during a pandemic, nonetheless. So you've just got to get really specific. And there's not enough people doing that.
And when you're getting really specific, I think, you know, a lot of your current clients and also, you know, both you and I as entrepreneurs, it is different than being a busy something else. You know, the entrepreneur kind of personality and lifestyle is very different than a lot of other professions. So what are some of the mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making when they're pursuing relationships, and how do they kind of get over how do they see them you know, in themselves? How do they be aware of them, and how do they, you know, rectify them?
Great questions. So if I had to name two things off the top of my head that entrepreneurs are missing when they're looking for relationships, one is, so remember the statistics that I showed in my slide, 68% of entrepreneurs are divorced, and then they also stay on the market longer. So hint, hint, entrepreneurs, you should also be dating other entrepreneurs. Even though everyone swears that they don't want to date people who are in their sphere of work, we all do such different things that it really doesn't matter. So we might all be founders, but of very different sectors. So it's not like there's going to be a collision. You know, so I think that's something people should be a little bit more open to, especially when you have a very hectic entrepreneur life, because the other person is going to be able to understand that. The second thing is, if you are deciding, I don't want an entrepreneur, you're going to venture out, that's totally fine, but you've got to be willing to create and make the time and keep the times. Because how often do entrepreneurs say, okay, they've matched with someone, they're going to meet them. Okay, I've got to cancel at the last minute. We all have done that. We've done it to our family, our friends, our partners. We've got to cancel because something came up. Well, you can't do any of that stuff. You've got to create sacred time that's going to be made for your relationships, you and this other person, without any cancellations. And to your next question, how do you figure out where you have shortcomings? You got to just get really honest with yourself. That's not really a problem that I've ever had, because I grew up with a very tell it like it is Southern mom. She's still that way to this day. And so I'm very self-aware. So before you can even point out anything that's wrong with me, I'm probably already on it and have 5 self-help books that are helping me get through it. So I think you got to make an honest assessment.
Yeah,
I think you've got to make an honest assessment between you and you about what your shortcomings are, and then make a plan to tackle them. But you don't need to get overwhelmed by trying to tackle all of them. That's what we do in the app. That's why each day there's just like one little step to take in each of the categories. We don't have to climb the whole staircase. We just need to make one step to change. And at the end of the year, you'll be different. It'll be different.
And so if there was one step that entrepreneurs should at least start with or focus on, what would that be? And how does that help them connect to people, to other entrepreneurs, as you suggest, you know, maybe in different sectors? Or how does what they implement, make sure that they're connecting with people who really get it, who get the kind of entrepreneurial lifestyle, who get entrepreneurs? What's one thing that everyone can kind of walk away with in terms of things that they should implement this year?
Mm-hmm. So when you create your schedule for the day, for the week, you or your assistant, I want you to take, so in a week, I want you to take an hour. That's not a lot to ask. We can find an hour somewhere. Okay. Have your assistant or yourself mark off what day you have that hour. Maybe it's 2 days and you get 2 30-minute segments. That might even be better. Then I want you to create a new profile. If you already have a profile and you're still single, then I'm telling you it's not good enough. It's not going to pass Coach T's standards. We need a redo. We need a new thumbnail photo, a new description, all that. And then once you have that, 15 minutes for one of those days, I want you to spend time being deliberate on an app. The other 15 minutes in that day, I want you to spend time popping in to a virtual happy hour for entrepreneurs. It's not hard to Google and figure out what's going on, who's in your sphere. And maybe you don't want someone who's in tech. You want something else. Great. Go to one of those other events. And there's just a lot of places to connect right now because we can't meet in person. So it's just a plethora of options. The other thing you can do, so that's 30 minutes. The other thing you can do is if you're not on Clubhouse, you can get on Clubhouse, you can get an invite to Clubhouse, and I want you to take 15 minutes popping in to some different rooms, hearing the things that people have to say. And then once you're in there, if you like someone or like something, you can click on their bio, you can follow them, and then you can say, hey, I just heard you on Clubhouse, blah, blah, blah. This was interesting. Now you've created a connection that can now form into something else. And then for the other 15 minutes, okay, I want you to go through your Rolodex of people who are in your everyday life or who have been in your recent past that you could really evaluate, is there any potential in having a relationship with any of these people? And does it make any sense to connect and just pop in and say, hey, how are you? Like, what's going on? Here's what I'm working on. And just see if there's any possibility of a connection. So I've given you 4 very distinct avenues that you could jump in for 15-minute segments and could totally change your 2021.
That's amazing. I had not thought about using Clubhouse in that way. I have been doing some networking and I've held some sessions, but I like that. And also, yeah, like, recycling is always, good. We're all pro recycling. So no, but right now I think, especially, when a lot of areas are back in tighter lockdowns, reconnecting with people is important for so many reasons, right? Checking in with people to make sure that they're okay, they're not too depressed and isolated. Yeah. And, and also like, yeah, we were kind of attracted to each other. Maybe there could be something there, I like that because I've been reconnecting with people really just out of a sense of wanting to make sure other people are okay. And, but I hadn't thought about reconnecting with people, like looking through my contacts to say like, is there anyone that I maybe could have something else with? I hadn't thought about that one. So I think that one's a really good one. And especially, right now, as we're in these kind of tighter stages of lockdown and, we're always looking through our kind of, quote unquote, Rolodex or our contacts for a variety of purposes, right? For introductions, for business purposes, etc. So the habit is already there and we're already making time for it. It's just the intentionality and the outcome for what we desire is different. So
absolutely. And it never hurts to have another contact. So the worst thing that happens is you have another contact. And as we know, as entrepreneurs, we're one contact away from the next big thing that we need to happen. So it doesn't hurt. You just put them in your phone, move on,
Yeah, for sure. And so in terms of people kind of exploring, different dating apps and taking some of these tips, you're then going to offer this free masterclass for people so that they can learn more, kind of along some of those lines that you were talking about, tips that are very personalized to them.
Exactly. So for the masterclass, it's an hour long. And then after the hour, we have a Q&A session if anyone has questions. So what we're going to do there is we're going to get really in depth to the 4 principles that were shared on the screen before, and I'm going to walk you through how you can start implementing them, because I love to hear what people have to say, and I'm always up for personal growth. But if you don't tell me how I can implement it right now and change my life, I'm over it. It's great to have ideas, but without implementation, nothing. So I promise you that they're very implementable, and you'll walk away with a new sense of how you can be strategic with your time and dating life, because that's what it's called, strategic dating, maximizing time and optimizing results.
Yeah, because this is your biggest investment, right? If it's going to be your quote unquote other half, then it's your biggest investment, apart from your kids, if you're a parent, and your business is obviously a huge part of where you're investing your time, but you're really investing your heart into this and potentially becoming, a team, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was funny. I was just in another forum prior to this, and I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs who were talking about their lack of success online. And it only took about 5 minutes for me to understand, okay, so you're on one of those, non-paying dating apps. Well, of course. And they were sort of complaining about, well, now it just turns into this other reoccurring fee. And my point was, well, it's the biggest investment of your life, potentially besides children. So you've got to sort of put forth that effort instead of the lack thereof, and then getting the lack of results you're getting, and then complaining about it. Because I find so often, and I see it across the board, entrepreneurs and otherwise, people who are single are very jaded. You guys are a jaded group because you haven't implemented the right tactics and tools to be successful. And then you're disappointed, and you have a right to be disappointed, but you are wasting your time and everyone else's time. So let's get strategic about it, like we do with our businesses, because we just wouldn't just be willy-nilly about a business decision or about a fundraising endeavor, okay, or about hiring a CMO. We would be very strategic about it. There'd be a plan, and it would need to be implemented, and the boxes would need to be checked. Otherwise, at the end of the week, we've got a problem. And that's how we have to think about our dating life. And we don't think our business is bad if things are not working out. We think we've got to figure out a strategy. The business is our baby. The business is good. It's the other stuff we've got to figure out to make it all come together in harmony.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the entrepreneurs who are on apps and who are thinking about how to connect with others, what are some of the things that, like, I love the idea or the advice that you had in terms of these happy hours.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you think people should kind of transition those conversations from more business-like into more romantic? Because I know personally, I get a lot of interactions with male entrepreneurs, and it's unclear, and sometimes they're vocal about it. It's unclear whether they're really pursuing a business partnership or something romantic. Should they just ask straight out? How do they transition those conversations if they meet in a professional networking environment where you have less of the physical cues that you would have when you're meeting in person?
Yeah. So what I find, there's a couple of things. I wouldn't say that I would go to, say, an entrepreneur event, like even once things back open up in person, and start being, overtly flirtatious, or that I would be on a Zoom, happy hour, being, showing my, keen interest on a particular person.
Right.
The way that you leverage these things, just like I was saying with Clubhouse, is so you connect in the forum, and then you make sure that while the forum, like as soon as the forum ends, within those next 10 minutes, you connect with them off the forum, and you follow them, or you send the message or whatever, and you just follow up and say, that was an interesting point you had about this. I'd love to discuss this more, or whatever. And then now you're outside of that forum. It's a private forum. And then if they have an interest back, you'll be able to pick up the cues and figure it out. And what's nice about the videos is you can sort of see the body language a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like that it's showing somebody that you were listening to them, right? That you were giving them your attention. You know, like my example of those guys who say, hey, that's just not going to cut it. But if somebody says like, oh, when you were talking about X, you know, I totally agree. And I was thinking da 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 da. That is something I'm going to engage with. So yeah, I think
1,000%. 1,000%. And that's also a technique for the dating profiles. So I often get, you know how it is online. There are so many profiles and probably like 10% of them are fantastic quality. And you know, those people get pinged all the time. So it's really funny when you look at their profiles, it's like, Carrie hasn't been on since 2019. But people are probably still pinging her because her profile was just on point. But what's important about that is how do you stand out in those situations is the same way you would stand out in the situation we just discussed. Listen to something that they said, read the profile, something that they said, dig more in depth into that, ask questions about it, but good questions, not surface level. Let's show you've got some depth to you. And that's instantly intriguing. So I'm from New Orleans. And so I remember one time being on an app and someone sort of dug into that and they talked about the French and Spanish influence and the Louisiana architecture. And I was there because I knew all about that. And I was like, oh, wow, that was one sentence in my profile, but you honed in on it. And so you're listening. And that's the first good sign instead of the generic, hey, cutie, how are you? It's just odd. It's just like, no. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, like straight out of the gate, I refer to myself as a bon vivant, and you know, and I know that like there's like half or more that have already said like I don't even know what that is. Like, hopefully they swiped the other way, and but some people will engage with that, or I refer to myself as a culture vulture, and so some people will say like, hey, have you listened to the new whatever, or have you seen the new, whatever. And so it's the hook, right? And we do it with our businesses all the time, right? We find that connection and transition that into a sales opportunity, or at least a relationship that you can build with a customer. And it's not so dissimilar in terms of building relationships with people in other ways, right?
So I love that. And what you just said, I love it. I haven't heard someone say culture vulture before. And I'm thinking for you, that even like something that speaks to that would be a great elevator pitch for you. So someone who's needs to learn about you very quickly, about who you are, what you have to offer, and what you're looking for, that's got to fit somewhere in there. Very interesting. And it stands out because it makes someone, think, oh, let me know more about that. That's intriguing. And so often the things that we say are not so intriguing. I'm a founder, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, get in line. So are so many other people.
Yes, exactly. I agree. Well, I know I've got some work to do on my end after all of those gems you've just shared with us. And so if people want to take your masterclass, when is it and how do they find out more?
Yeah, so it is January the 11th and 12th. So this coming Monday and Tuesday. And Monday, it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. And on Tuesday, it's at 6 p.m. Eastern. You've got options there. So make some time. It's just an hour, but it's really good. Bring your notepad. There's some things that are going to be light bulb moments that you'll be able to take away and implement. So I'd love to see you there. We have limited space, so make sure that you sign up. And looking forward to seeing you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to share that with others because 2021 is definitely a year of love, I hope, for everybody. Self-love, romantic love, love within our communities. And I know you're there in DC and there hasn't been a whole lot of love there.
Already, 2021.
I know. But we're just gonna spread this love everywhere, and it's gonna permeate DC too.
Thank you. We appreciate it over here.
Yes, good. Well, I love you, and thank you for sharing those tips with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, we'll do it again sometime.
Okay, I'll see ya.
Ciao for now.